Yet another example of, I know I rag on white leftists who unfortunately give people like these bones. Usually these guys, when it comes to the Marvels, the DCs, definitely when it comes to live action, but not just live action. We know that the comic books are worse. But they dangle the bone, right? And it's like, hey, look at us. We're going to tokenize. You're not going to get an original character, Mr. Black person. We're going to give you because remember, this is the only way you can ever see yourself. You can only ever be inspired if you see someone that's of the same skin tone because, yeah, that's not a learned trait by any means. That's just something that's naturally occurring. And if you can't tell, I'm being fucking sarcastic. But they dangle that bone, and this is why they do all of this tokenization, race changes, all of this stuff. You get black versions of classically white characters. Because there are weirdos like this, which I believe is a black man who has this position. And he's fucking weird for having the position, I will say that. Yeah. These are the bozos who are not only ruining comic books, but these are the weirdos that the guys that are generally in charge, unfortunately, because we understand that this is kind of big time corporate entities now with DC and Marvel in terms of who they're tied to, who they're trying to appeal to. And this is what this weirdo said. When mutants are introduced to the MCU, I want Magneto to be African American, and his motivation all stems from everything we've all had to endure being black in America. So let's backtrack. He wants to hijack the character. He wants the character to be race swapped, and what this does, and to the almost 2,000 weirdos who like this shit, they're admitting to what a lot of y'all weirdos said isn't what the intention is, and that is to take the character, and what you're doing is you're telling us the sole reason you're doing this, because when you do that, especially tell a story about them and have it be tied to their race or something, have them have to have some big tie to their ethnic background or the race. You're telling us right there that that's the reason why you made the change. And he is saying, yes, please give this to me. And these are the weirdos. And I told y'all, MCU is going in a direction that's of the absolute worst. Anyway, but I say to this fucking weirdo, why? 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 What is it about? And this is what a lot of these pro-black, fist in the air, Black Lives Matter fucking weirdos. I'm going to tap into the psyche a little bit for y'all. Definitely those of you that don't watch my other videos who may stumble across this one. You see, this is the thing. As I mentioned before, a lot of black and white leftists who act like they're fans of comic books, really, I don't for once believe this. What's his name? Paris? Or is that not his name? I don't know what his name. Whatever his name is, I don't for once believe this guy owns any comic books. But this is how they see it. They only view legitimacy through the characters that have fair skin. Let's say that. And it's not like, yeah, he could have easily said, okay, there's this other character that may be black. I would love to see him expanded upon. We're talking about mutants. There are black mutants. You still haven't, again, I've said this time and time again, you still have not got a legitimate, authentic, real Storm yet that has yet to appear. Halle Berry sucked. The other chick sucked too. Those are not light skinned biracial Storm. No, that's not Storm. Nonetheless, instead of advocating for those, here we are. And here's the thing that you're going to see a lot of people that are saying, which is a perpetuated myth, and that is that, excuse me, well, that will be more accurate to how these characters were created. This is, and that is, of course, the main appeal is, okay, the X-Men were created to be synonymous to the Civil Rights Act, Civil Rights era, and Magneto was, he's Malcolm X, and Professor X is Martin Luther King Jr. None of those statements are rooted in fact. I've debunked this many, many times. Using not only statements from the creators, but just say it's called like X-Men and the Social Justice Myth. There's a long form video that you guys can check out. I go through the receipts. Stan Lee himself has admitted that when he first created the X-Men, he was not even thinking about racial bullcrap or anything like that. He has himself said that the only reason they are in the way that they are was because he was too lazy and he didn't want to He said the more difficult thing. Sorry, the dogs are barking in the background, but he said the most difficult thing you can give someone powers, but the most difficult thing you can do, or the most difficult thing about that, is trying to explain how they got them. He said he didn't want to have to deal with that and tell all these stories. So what if we said they were mutants and they were born that way? Voila, the X-Men were created. It had fucking nothing to do with that. And this is what I would encourage you guys to do. For those that perpetuate this nonsense, especially, so even if we conceded just for the sake of conversation, there was, we know for a fact they weren't created. He, again, there's a bunch of interviews of him explaining that as well. He never created the X-Men to fight racial injustice or anything like that. He recognized that there was sort of a comparison to a movement that was going on there, but that wasn't why he created them, and he never created them with that intention. And to be fair, basically any fucking character you can draw kind of, not even just inspiration, but there's some compare and contrast that you're going to be able to do through whatever time period that they were released. But to say that the X-Men were solely created to do that is a lie. It is not true. But I always encourage you guys, when people say this bull crap, this whole Malcolm X Magneto thing, I tell them, show the receipts. What about Magneto? From the 60s up to the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, really, to up to Claremont era. So right before that, what about Magneto was in relation to Malcolm X? And they'll never be able to tell you. You know why? Because he had no relation to Malcolm X. Unless you are going to concede that Malcolm X was a violent supremacist that wanted to simply rule over his inferiors, which was all Magneto was. The whole, there's a connection between him and Professor X, and he had, the whole Jewish thing. That was a retcon. That was a retcon that did not happen until Claremont. And Claremont himself has said, this is not my opinion, Claremont himself has said he didn't draw any influence from fucking Malcolm X. What he was doing, it was more benign, in the Jewish dichotomy was what he drew the influence from. It had fucking nothing to do with Malcolm X. So when people say this, it's like, number one, if that's what you want to say that Magneto was you'd have to absolutely concede that Malcolm X was a supremacist, but was a supremacist that wanted to rule over everybody that he felt was inferior to you. And if that's the leg, or rather the hill that you want to die on, by all means say that. It's such a misrepresentation of brother Malcolm X. But this goes to show that these people are stupid, and all they think of Malcolm X is, he's more militant version of MLK. And that's simply, again, that's also false. But nonetheless, the person that you think is Magneto, that wasn't the case for really almost 20 fucking years. So you think if that was the reason why he was created, he shows some similarity to brother Malcolm X. That's not what we were dealing with, though. But this is what we do deal with. History, History channel, they'll put out an article that perpetuates this nonsense. And really, that was a more recent phenomenon. This didn't happen until people didn't start drawing contrast to the civil rights era with X-Men until like 30 years after the fact. And people said, this is similar. You can't find any sort of connection or interviews or anything like that conflate that. That doesn't happen until like the fucking 90s and the 2000s. Why do you think that's the case? It's because they weren't created to be that. So not only is this guy, to the people that are going to justify what it is that this crackhead wants to happen to Magneto, their understanding of what the X-Men were when they were first created is based off a myth. Don't take my word for anything. Read it. Read. When we first even saw Magneto, the first time we saw him in the first X-Men, being their first big villain, the first thing we saw was him flat out saying, "We are the superiors, and I want to control." What the hell does that have to do with Malcolm X? Nothing. Unless you again want to concede that he was like basically the equivalent to some sort of race-based dictator, if you will, ruler. But we know that wasn't Malcolm. But it's because they're conflating different eras. For 20 years down there, that had nothing. There wasn't even any connection. because they made it up. But unfortunately, people are going to use that myth and that lie to justify bad behavior. And I've already told y'all, if you don't think you're not going to get tokenized mutants, even though there are black, Asian, like you would think, definitely considering Claremont's era and the new mutants, you got mutants of all different ethnic backgrounds. You would think that they would somehow try to do this right. Don't bet on it. You're probably going to get black, gay versions of characters that you didn't ask for. Is more so what you're going to happen because these crackhead blue check marks are calling for it like this. And remember, this is who they try to appeal to. Their peers, try to impress their peers now. This is what Hollywood, and these are just vanity projects for. That's what you're going to see. You're going to get Fantastic Four. I already told you, I issued a challenge to them like 2 years ago. I said, I challenge you to make them the way that they are supposed to. Are you crazy? That we already know they already tokenized the Fantastic Four. But if you think they're going to have a four, you're talking about Marvel's first family, obviously. And if you think that they're going to make them be functional, straight and white, you're out of your damn mind. You out of your mind. There's no way that they're going to do that. But here we are. God, these guys are weirdos, man. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.